Hello, the Pioneer viewers. How are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war to your screens. In a moment, we will share with you a very remarkable development related to the war. As it is known, the Ukrainian armed forces retreated from the Avdiivka after a long epic defense. Avdiivka is now dominated by the Russian armed forces. However, the Russian army's victory here was costly. There are huge problems within the units of the Russian armed forces operating on this front line. Many Russian soldiers are experiencing major problems during and after the war. There are reports that many Russian soldiers are trying to harm themselves. And not only those who have tried, there are also those who succeeded. So what are the latest developments regarding the Russian soldiers? Let's examine it together. As the Pioneer team, we continue to inform you about the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all your comments on our videos. Please continue to express your opinions about our content in the comments. Let's start if you are ready, the Pioneer reports. The battle between the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian armed forces continues unabated. The Ukrainian armed forces are wearing down the Russian troops with incredible resistance on the front line. Even though that the Russian army captured Avdiivka today, their losses are quite high. This is what the Ukrainian armed forces have been aiming for with their strategies since the beginning of the battle for Avdiivka. As it is known, the Ukrainian armed forces held out in Avdiivka for a long time during the attacks of the Russian armed forces.
Давай! Давай, бежо!
But when they did withdraw and why? The Ukrainian troops were going to withdraw from Avdiivka anyway, but before this withdrawal could take place, Russian troops had to suffer heavy losses, and they managed to do that. As we have already reported in our previous reports, the Ukrainian army has worn out the Russian army during the Battle of Avdiivka. The heavy losses of the Russian troops caused a lot of criticisms. The Russian army also suffered internal attrition in this process. It is reported that a large number of Russian soldiers started to experience major mental problems during the Battle of Avdiivka. It seems that the Russian army does not care about the conditions of these soldiers. Let me ask you a question. How do you understand this? As it is known, after Avdiivka, Russian soldiers were transferred to Robotin without any opportunity to rest. And the Russian troops will now be stationed here. Moreover, the Ukrainian defense here is even stronger. Therefore, the losses of the Russian troops here will be even higher. One of them is Andrei Morozov, a Russian volunteer soldier in the Russian armed forces, an extreme Russian nationalist and war blogger. The developments regarding Morozov has created a great shock in the Russian army. Russian volunteer soldier Morz died from a bullet fired from his own gun. The fact that Morz shot himself created a great surprise in the Russian army because Morz was known as one of the most enthusiastic people about the war. War was invincible for him, and the Russian army had to fight all over the world if possible. Obviously, the Russian nation had to dominate the whole world, and he left the Russian nationalism as its peak. When such a person took his own life, it was a great shock among the soldiers in the Russian army and Russian bloggers. Moreover, the letter of the Russian volunteer Andrei Morozov created an even bigger shock. In the letter in question, Morz made the following statements. This letter is an indication of what happened. The reason for what happened is due to the following. I ask you to conduct an investigation for the following reasons. The provision of weapons and transportation has never been achieved. Since the beginning of the last year, we have been fighting in special military operation zones without any mortar or artillery support. Many of our friends have lost their lives there, and there was also a complete lack of transportation for the offensive operations or evacuation and transportation of people. There is no plan for the number and rotation of troops. At the moment, less than 30% of the personnel in the regiment remains, and to date, there has been no rotation and replenishment of the regimental personnel, and many are wounded or killed or missing. Medical assistance? I can't say we have ever received any significant support. If I use my own example, I was shocked. I contacted the chief medical officer. The regimental officers told me that these soldiers said the following about my injury, and shell shock is not a wound. Don't look for opportunities to run away from the war. Go and fight. We don't know the number of people injured after completing a combat mission. No one can estimate it. So I went to the hospital on my own, and they prescribed me medication that I bought at my own expense, and I was given to myself by the battalion doctor. When the time came after I was treated in the shelter, the regiment's chief medical officer refused to issue a certificate of injury, so they turned to local doctors who gave it to me. So far, I have not received any payments from the president of the Russian Federation and the city of St. Petersburg, but I could not settle these payments, and the DPR army officers did not help me process the payments, did not take me to the hospitals, and did not buy medicines. I did not undergo medical examinations and rehabilitations or even a break for the service after I was wounded. There are many such cases of the injuries that were not reported by the regiment command. Many soldiers were sent back to the war with concussions or shrapnel without being examined and rehabilitated, and many of them died. In November 2023, the command of the regiments transferred 300 people to the command of the veterans PMC. Now almost of them have been killed or wounded, and we are commanded by the veterans PMC in all the sectors of the Avdiivka front. The message that they are in charge comes from the command of the first crops of the DPR army, specifically the call sign Cream. This military personnel of the PMC, veterans, I'm not afraid of this word. It is a rabble of ex-convicts, drug addicts, and looters hiding behind our mobilized regiment, carrying out offensive actions without being present there. They came after we occupied the lines, made a video report, took weapons from the dead, armor, plates, everything of the value from both Russian army soldiers and the enemies, and left us entering the gray zone. Those who sent us here knew that this would happen. We knew it too, but we didn't believe that they would be so irresponsible. They left us alone, and I will no longer be a part of such irresponsibility. I hope that what I have written will be seen by the moral commanders, if there are still any, and that they will do what is necessary. Farewell. As we can see, Morse, who lost his life due to the bullet fired from his own gun, has shared very detailed information about the war and the Russian soldiers. The problems in the Russian armed forces will greatly affect the future of the Russian army. So what do you think? Do you think the effects of the operations of the Ukrainian armed forces are really big? Do you think we will see more similar incidents in the Russian army? How do you think the loss of Moore's life will affect the Russian military? Let me know in the comments. I read and I care about all of your comments.